What's up, everybody? My name is Tim Roswick, and today we're talking about 3 pillars of a successful game development project. And it's going to be fun. I just want to say before we get started that I am not a millionaire. I have not shipped 1 million copies. I have not made a super amazingly viral video game. So if you're looking for like advice from someone that's made millions of dollars off of games, this is not the video for you. I want to be super clear on that. But what I have done is I have been successful. And the way that I consider success is actually meeting your objectives or exceeding your objectives. And I want to kind of share my methods on how to do that because it's something that I've kind of honed over a period of time. And I've learned that like you don't need to make $1 million with a game or a software project to be successful, right? To consider it financially successful. What you need to do is you need to have some benefit from it, right? You need to make more money than you spend, or you need to get some form of value in exchange for your time and money. That can be exposure, that can be, ad revenue, that can be people buying it, that can be people supporting you, whatever it is. And my games, I think, have served a lot of different purposes, depending on the title, but I think most of them have been successful in my mind because of a couple different things, and I'm gonna share those things with you here. So first of all, I want you to think about, if you're making a game or you're making a software project or whatever it is, how many copies do you need to sell? How many copies do you actually need to sell to be successful, to be financially successful in that regard? Think about what it actually takes, like what would you be happy with and why? And once you kind of figure that out, you're gonna realize that you haven't figured out shit and that you just kind of guessed, which is what most people do. They just say, oh, well, I just, I want to sell 100,000 copies. I want to sell 1 million copies. I want to make $1 million. They just pick a random number, and that's how they come up with their, meaning of success. And when they don't hit that success, they get bummed out. Even though the game might have been profitable, or they might have had fun, or they might have, did a lot of stuff they never thought they could do, they get bummed out because they didn't meet their goals or objectives. And that's dangerous because that can mean that you stop or you quit or you fail, right? You can turn an actual success into a failure by having the improper expectations. So I just want to get that out of the way before we kind of dive into this. So there are 3 core things that I think you need to define for yourself, and you need to understand before you can be successful in a game. And some people are successful by accident. So some people, they didn't do any of this and they were successful. There are definitely exceptions to the rules. But if you don't like exceptions and you don't want to be one of those people that is successful by accident, you want to actually plan this out and maybe make this happen, I got the 3 pillars for you. So the first pillar is the budget. How much money are you spending on your project? How many assets have you bought? How many things have you paid for? How many people have you hired? How much time have you spent? Time is super important too. A lot of people don't consider their time in the budget. They think, oh, well, time is free. No, it's not free. You're gonna die. It's literally the only thing that you can never get back. Okay, you can get back money. You can get back all kinds of stuff. You can't get back time. So time absolutely should not be free, and you should calculate the budget with your time in there, with your teammates' time in there. You need to understand how much you're spending. And on top of that, so let's say you are in a team and maybe you live in a house together and you're trying to make a game. Maybe the budget is the burn rate for your group, right? And burn rate basically is how much money you're spending every month just to keep all the lights on and keep food in everybody's stomach, right? Like that might be part of the budget. If you don't want to include time, but you can include the burn rate of whatever your project is, that's fine. It's not the most ideal way, it's not the healthiest way, but it works. So you got to understand the budget. How much are you spending, time and resources, to actually get this done? The second pillar is the revenue. How much money do you want to make? And in a perfect world, this should be the budget, maybe plus or minus 20%, 30%, 50%, whatever it is. 20% is a good number. It's perfectly doable in most cases if you're not a crazy person that likes to remortgage their house and spend $200,000 on your first game project. That wasn't to anybody specific, so if it sounds like your situation, I'm sorry. So you want to, once you have the budget, you got to figure out the revenue, right? Like, what do you want to make? How much do you want to make from this project? What do you want to be profitable, and why? Why is important too. So don't just pick $100,000 or 100,000 units or $1 million or a million units or whatever it is. Why do you want to make that much money? Why do you want to sell that many units? And for most people that are reasonable, what they want to do is they want to make enough money on their game to keep making games. That's what they want to do. And I think that's reasonable. I think that's, something that I would love. I know a lot of people that like that sort of thing. I don't necessarily need to be a millionaire, but if I can support myself doing what I'm doing, I'm all about that, right? Like, if I could just live a normal life and just continually do the stuff that I do, that's plenty for me. So, and I know a lot of people like that. So how much revenue based on your budget do you actually need? And I said based on your budget because that's what I mean. I don't just mean pull a number out of your ass. I mean based on like what you're actually spending, how much money do you need to make from that? So third and final piece of all this is the schedule. What's the timeline to pull that revenue from that budget? Like, how long is it going to take you to go from A to B to actually get that thing done? And this is the thing that usually gets stretched almost all the time. Feature creep, coming up with ideas or adding a bunch of stuff or getting feedback and having to change stuff or having new teammates come on board or whatever it is. The schedule is usually a thing that always shifts. But the problem is, what most people don't realize, because they don't ever go through these 3 pillars, they don't ever say, hey, by shifting the schedule out by 6 months, we're also bumping up the budget, right? So guess what? You shift the schedule, the budget goes up. Guess what else has got to go up? The revenue. Now you need to make more revenue, right? Because you got a higher budget. Your revenue is based on your budget, right? Like maybe it's budget times 1.5 or 1.2, right? That's your target objective. Now everything gets raised because of one thing, and all of these things are connected. I hope you can see that. I hope you can see like how each one of these individual things can affect the other, right? And definitely if you have a higher budget, sometimes you can have a shorter schedule. Not always, sometimes. And vice versa. Sometimes you have a lower budget, maybe you can have a longer schedule, right? Because you can work in your free time or whatever it is. Maybe you have a part-time job or a full-time job or whatever it is, and you can kind of make money doing that. But it's really important to kind of think about, because the schedule is when shit's going to get released, when you're actually going to be out the door. And if, for example, if your budget is based solely on your hours, right, you're not putting any money into it, but the schedule is a year or 2 years, that's still a very high budget, right? Which is going to make the revenue that you need to make back, to make that worth it, to make that sustainable financially, pretty high. And the longer you spend on your game, the more revenue you need to make to actually sustain your game development hobby, or whatever it is that you want to call it, right? Most people call it hobbies because they cry in a corner they can't make money. This is part of the reason why. They don't understand the relationship between the budget, the revenue, and the schedule, right? Those are the 3 pillars of any kind of project, of any kind of product. Most businesses, but definitely games involved, because if you can't figure out those 3 things, if you can't effectively work with those 3 things and really make sure that each one is proportioned properly and each one is set properly, you're going to have a hard time. I know we did an interview with James Stone. What was an interview? He popped on a live stream with me. He made a game called Jump Gunners, and he made that game from start to finish in 3 months, and it got showed at GDC by Microsoft in the Microsoft booth. It got a bunch of publications, and that game was much smaller than his next game, Xenosis. But the beautiful thing about that game was that he had 3 months of dev time into it, from start to finish, 3 months. So his schedule was 3 months, which means his budget was somewhat small. He lived in Thailand, I believe, too, so his living costs were small. So short schedule, small living costs. Guess what the revenue needs to be profitable? Not much. Not much, right? That's a better approach, I think, to game development than what most people do. 2 years, 5 years. I'm doing it. Hell, I'm guilty of this too. Philophobia, man, it's going on 3.5 years. that game is not going to be profitable. There's like no way. Like it's so long versus some of my other 17 games, right? Some of them taking a week to make, some of them taking a weekend, right? Like how much does it take for those games to be profitable compared to something that's taking me 3.5 years? I could tell you right now, as a marketer, I can sell 10 copies of a Game Jam game way better than I can sell, thousands of copies of my game that's take 3.5 years. So take that into account. Just think about that when you're making games, when you're thinking about how to be successful. Don't think that you need to spend 2 to 5 years of your life building something and then launching it, hoping and praying that you make $100,000 or $1 million. It's not how it works. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like and a thumbs up down below. Once again, my name is Tim Roswick, and I'll see you again tomorrow.